Buon pomeriggio a tutti, questa primissima parte la facciamo in italiano e poi dopo, come sapete, naturalmente in lingua inglese. Voglio dare innanzitutto il benvenuto da parte dell'Università degli Studi di Brescia, anche a nome delle università di Pavia, di Bergamo e di Milano Bicocca. Infatti sono queste 4 università che si sono unite in un consorzio per stimolare la crescita e l'affermazione del trasferimento di conoscenza, del trasferimento tecnologico, in una parola per incentivare ciò che la ricerca produce in tutti questi atenei, e non soltanto per incentivare questo, ma anche per regolamentare. E quindi tutto questo fa parte di uno sforzo comune per poter realizzare ciò che la ricerca pubblica fa nella nostra regione, in una parte della nostra regione naturalmente, e abbiamo anche altri atenei che chiaramente fanno questo. Non è la nostra una competizione, ma è semplicemente un cercare di assemblarci e di cercare di portare avanti tutto ciò. E proprio per meglio valorizzare la ricerca pubblica si è deciso di promuovere queste interviste, un ciclo di interviste che hanno un loro titolo, no? Noi la società, il ruolo e l'impatto della ricerca pubblica. Queste interviste hanno uno scopo preciso, da un lato quello di presentare ciò che accade all'interno della ricerca pubblica e del trasferimento della conoscenza, e i temi sono i più vari, sono temi che riguardano l'energia, che riguardano la sicurezza, che riguardano le tecnologie, che riguardano le telecomunicazioni, le risorse naturali, cioè tutto ciò che è rilevante grazie alle trasformazioni che sono indotte dal trasferimento della conoscenza. E questa è la prima di queste interviste. Io sono particolarmente grato, naturalmente al professor Riccardo Pietrabissa, che è il mio delegato all'innovazione e al trasferimento tecnologico, e che in questa università sta portando avanti il programma di Health and Wealth che caratterizza dal punto di vista tematico l'università stessa. Al tempo stesso voglio ringraziare per la sua presenza il professor Sergio Cavalieri, che rappresenta qui il prorettore dell'Università di Bergamo e che rappresenta un po' tutti gli altri atenei, va bene? E siamo certi che negli altri atenei questo ciclo andrà avanti. Peraltro una cosa interessante è quella che verrà ripreso quindi ci sarà un filmato, un video di queste interviste, e poi si collezioneranno questi video in modo tale che rappresenteranno un momento culturale, di raccolto culturale importante in queste varie tematiche. Infine, ultimo ma non ultimo, voglio ringraziare i nostri ospiti. Dico i nostri ospiti perché abbiamo da un lato il professor Martin Williams del King's College di Londra. Welcome to our university. We're really proud to have you here this evening. E meglio di me sicuramente farà l'intervistatore, cioè il dottor Federico Pedrocchi, che pure ringraziamo di essere qui. È un giornalista scientifico di grande esperienza e conoscenza del settore, e peraltro, se non mi sbaglio, anche docente di New Media presso il Master di Comunicazione Scientifica e Innovazione dell'Università di Milano Bicocca. E in più con un'esperienza anche a livello di comunità europea, cercando forse di convincerli, non lo so, ecco, a migliorare quello che è il rapporto tra media e conoscenza scientifica nel nostro continente, e io aggiungo sperando anche naturalmente nel nostro paese. Allora, prima di dare loro la parola, di lasciare a loro lo scenario, pregherei il professor Riccardo Pietrabissa di illustrarci brevemente, va bene, un po' tutte queste iniziative. Grazie Riccardo.
Sì, grazie. Io veramente due parole. Questa iniziativa che oggi prende avvio di questo ciclo di interviste dal titolo Noi e la società nasce proprio nell'ambito, come diceva il rettore, di questo accordo fra i 4 atenei, di cui quello è il logo University for Innovation, che ha proprio lo scopo di stimolare l'impatto della ricerca e dei risultati della ricerca nella società. Impatto che viene da molti considerato insufficiente, piuttosto che molto focalizzato al rapporto con l'impresa, no? Questo è un po' un tema. Poi c'è tutto il tema della medicina, evidentemente, dove questo è molto più evidente, ma meno sottolineato. Quello che noi vorremmo fare con questo ciclo di interviste è documentare e discutere del ruolo che c'è tra il cittadino, il decisore può essere sicuramente il decisore politico, ma non solo il decisore politico, e la conoscenza, la nuova conoscenza. Potrei citarvi degli eventi importanti che sono accaduti, pensate al nucleare, ormai 30 anni fa quasi, pensate al tema degli OGM, pensate ai temi recenti anche di bioetica, in cui spesso il dibattito tra il cittadino, il politico o da altre figure decisive sono basati sul sentito dire, non sulla reale consapevolezza che la ricerca scientifica può dare e può stimolare. Ecco, questi sono temi ovviamente molto importanti, molto critici, che però guardano a un futuro e a un progresso non di brevissima scala temporale, ma in genere di media scala temporale, cioè decisioni che prese oggi poi coinvolgono eventi che succederanno nei prossimi magari 10 anni. Ecco, su questi temi riteniamo che sia interessante che l'università proponga degli spunti di riflessione al cittadino, al politico, al decisore, all'industriale, in generale alla società. Questo è perché ci siamo chiamati noi e la società. Con l'avvio di oggi, un giornalista di scienza, un professore universitario, il tema che sottende questo obiettivo è il tema dell'ambiente, in particolare dei cambiamenti climatici. Ringrazio Maria Luisa Volta, che è stata promotrice di questa specifica iniziativa, ha ideato anche, devo dire, il ciclo di conferenze, ma volendo partire oggi con questa. Tema che credo sia sotto gli occhi di tutti, peraltro a Brescia, come sapete, è partito un progetto importante che si chiama Brescia Più, proprio sui temi del clima e dell'ambiente, per cui lascerei sicuramente la parola a Federico, che intervisterà Martin, sul tema di come una persona che lavora nell'università, che lavora nella ricerca, può influenzare le decisioni rendendo consapevole il decisore. Grazie.
Grazie. Yes, I'm Federico Pedrocchi. I'm a science journalist of Sole 24 Ore. I have a weekly program dedicated to science at Radio 24. And I am the editor too of a web TV dedicated to innovation, whose name is Tribù. Well, we can start. But first of all, yes or no to the euro, Brexit?
The euro and Brexit are two different things.
Two different, yes, yes. to Brexit.
Well, the UK votes on the 23rd of June.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't dream of telling you or anybody else how I'm going to vote. But most of our air pollution problems are not confined to one country. The solutions are international. They need cooperation between countries.
Yeah.
Need I say any more?
No. You are forced to say.
No.
I want to ask you only a short question about your academic profile. Professor of air quality. If I'm not wrong, we don't have anything air quality in Italy. No. What does it mean? Is it a new course or not?
It used to be called air pollution. But people thought that was too negative a word.
Yeah.
Pollution, it sounds bad, it sounds dirty, it sounds unhealthy. So people decided that air quality was a much more positive message.
The problem is big, but the course seems very narrow, but there is enough to say, I think, and to teach.
It's a huge problem.
Huge problem.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that will be important to know something about your activity, not in academic area, because I know that you are involved. You have been involved, and you are involved in many projects, in many relationships with policymakers, and that's, I think, that could be important for us. It's the main topic of this meeting.
Okay. I started life as an atmospheric scientist working in a government research laboratory, doing work for the government, but also for other people, industry and business. I then moved into government itself. The UK, in many of its government departments, actually has science units working alongside policymakers.
Permanent units. Science units.
Science units. Yeah.
It's a long time that we...
Yeah, for 30 years maybe, 20 years. And I moved into the Environment Ministry to be head of the Air Quality Science Unit as a scientist, commissioning research, doing some research, informing policy and ministers. Then I was promoted to become head of the policy as well. So I looked after the policy and the science. And then almost 6 years ago now, I left the government ministry to go back to scientific research with the post at King's College in London. So I'm back now doing science that's related to policy, very closely related to policy decisions. For example, the group at King's College does work on some of the low emission zone proposals in London that you may have heard about, the so-called ultra low emission zone that the Mayor of London is proposing. We are doing research to show what different options might do in terms of improved public health and air pollution and so on. And I'm also doing work on the effect of policies to meet climate change targets, the effect of those policies on air quality and on public health. Because if you really go aggressively after climate change, if you really try hard to make big reductions in carbon dioxide emissions, then air pollution should improve as well.
Yes, this is a very strange issue that we talk about.
Yeah, we may talk about that later, but there are different ways of doing it. You can meet those targets in a dirty way or a clean way, and my research is looking at the different ways of doing that.
Okay. And how do you describe probably it's a little bit high, and how do you describe the situation in England for what concern environmental scientific knowledge that we have in this area and policy making nowadays?
Well, I may be biased because I've worked on both sides, but I think there's quite a close relationship between the science and the policy in the UK. All the big government departments, I mean, it's not just on air quality, but climate change, the Climate Change Department has a big scientific unit, the Environment Ministry has a big scientific unit, and so on. And there's really quite a good, close relationship between the two, the science and the policy. And the problem comes, of course, in every country is facing economic difficulties. Yeah. And so, unfortunately, research tends to be one of the areas where the money is reduced and funding is very difficult. So, and everybody suffers from that. We do in the UK, and I'm sure you do too.
You know, the main problem that we have here in Italy, and probably something similar, it's possible to find many other countries, but I don't know. Here we have the feeling that it's a very acute problem, is that scientific and technological research reach with very difficult. It's really difficult to reach the policy making at different levels, small municipalities, big municipalities, regions, government. And at the same time, I think that we have a problem to reach the lay public. And it's not possible to say the same thing. So there is a sort of sometimes terrific triangle, because policy making, they have to speak to lay public.
Yeah.
It's correct.
Yeah.
And so this is a big problem here. Do you think that it's the same in England, in other European countries, and in general, what you think of this big problem?
I think that's right. I think it's the same in most countries. It's not that the policy process doesn't accept the science or doesn't take it into account. I don't think that's the problem. The problem is with votes,
With
to
votes.
put it crudely. The reason governments at all levels, be it municipality or national or wider, the reason they don't necessarily act is because they don't often think that it's a particularly important problem in terms of public opinion and votes. And so that's where the lay public angle comes in, where, if people understand and appreciate, in this case, air pollution, if they understand that air pollution is a problem, and they make noises about it, and it's raised up as a high-profile issue in the media, then governments begin to act. And so, that public information, public acceptance of the science is important. The other thing that makes governments act, of course, is in Italy and in the UK and elsewhere in the EU, it's the EU legislation that drives a lot of action, and the threat of being taken to court and being given very big financial penalties is also from the top down.
You must do
is
that.
Also a big driver for action. But the public information thing is really important, I think.
Really important. But do you think that the language used by the tribe of scientists and the tribe of journalists to media to should be changed? If you look at how it is now.
I think writing about scientific issues for general consumption, for the general public, is a very difficult art. Scientists alone mostly can't do it.
Can't do it.
I mean, they get too technical. They write all the qualifications and the uncertainties first, and the main message will be 2 pages later. The trick, of course, is to make it understandable and to have an impact without distorting the truth too much. And that's not easy.
No. I think that popularization, divulgazione, is a great art of incompleteness. Yes. You must think that you can't say everything. One of the major problems that I meet in my work is that typically a scientist is able to say in a very good way, taking a long time, and it's completely in contrast of the room that we have, radio, TV, or newspaper. That's really a big problem. At the same time, what I see is that there are two opposite problems. We are all happy, for example, that in the last 30 years, the feeling from the public about all 40 years, I can say, about all the environmental problems is growing. That's really important. But at the same time, it is not a paradox, this. What we have a very wrong and mystifying concept. For example, that of Mother Nature. It's a direct consequence of the growing of a sensibility by environment. But there is no Mother Nature unless we think to a mother that feed or kill at the same time. No? And in all environmental problems, there are always these two different aspects. And it's not easy to cope with this when you have to talk with the public. And it's not easy too for policy maker.
Yeah. You're right, and I mean a really good example is the use of wood-burning stoves. There's a move, to go back to burning wood because people feel it's natural.
Yes.
Probably people think it's okay for climate because it's a carbon-neutral thing. And nobody actually understands and appreciates the fact that the particle emissions from wood-burning stoves are a potentially significant problem.
Yeah.
And so, that message is very difficult to get across to people.
Yeah.
There was a proposal in France to ban open burning in houses in Paris. And that proposal had to be scrapped, had to be thrown away. And it was the ecology minister that scrapped it because public opinion would be completely against it. And so that's a very difficult message to get across.
Yes.
And, I don't know how you solve that problem.
And I don't know if you agree, there is another paradox. Sometimes scientists tell to the policymaker, we knew this 4 years ago, why don't you move? Okay. And some other times, science can say something about a phenomenon, and the policymaker, they have to decide. It's true. Both cases are true. Both situations are true.
Yeah. Well, moving away, when I moved from government policy back into academic research, I was quite surprised this might sound a nasty thing to say, but I was quite surprised at how naive a lot of academic scientists are. They think, well, we've done this bit of research and it shows this particular thing is bad for health. Why don't people act? And you say, well, actually, it's not quite that simple.
No.
Because governments, once it gets to the decision the decision point, governments immediately get lobbied from all sides, from business, from industry, from green groups, from and the decision is then becomes very muddy and very, very dirty. And the VW Volkswagen thing is a good example.
Let's talk about.
We knew about
the scandal, Volkswagen scandal.
Yeah, a colleague of mine led the research, but I was one of the authors. We published a paper 5 years ago now, showing that sort of problem of the real world emissions from diesel cars being way higher than they should have been. The paper was published 5 years ago. The research was done 1-2 years before that. So people have known about it for a long time. But of course, getting any kind of action in the face of huge industry investment and commercial interests is just extremely difficult. And it still is. Even with the admission from VW that they were cheating, there are still government decisions or European level decisions that are imposing remedies for this much slower than one might have hoped. There's still a reluctance to act fast. And the reasons are obvious, I guess. They're just a very big...
But in a certain sense, you are telling us that Volkswagen was driven, forced by economical problem
I don't know why. Well, they were forced. They chose to do it that way.
Yes.
I don't know whether they were forced to do it. They might have been able to find other solutions that might have been more expensive, but they chose to cheat basically.
Yeah.
And they admitted it. But still, there's still a reluctance to push harder on environmental, on air pollution emissions from vehicles, and it's I guess because of the power of the industry lobbies in Europe that do that.
And this is why you are a promoter of vehicle remote sensors, VRS. That is a better way to control. Explain to the audience what's VRS and then tell us why.
Without getting technical and looking back at the things I said earlier about explaining difficult scientific problems for people, there's the regulation in Europe to measure these new, the real world emissions is a very long process. It involves putting instruments in the back of a car, and it takes a day to measure one car. But that's the way the regulation has gone. The way we did the research originally, it relies on basically a laser technique, if you like.
Laser.
A beam of light that shines across the road, and it measures cars as they go past. It measures the pollution emission from each car, and it's got a camera that photographs the license plate. So you get a measure of the emission, and you know what the car is. And
At
so
the same time.
You know what level it should be emitting at.
Who
and you can
pollute.
measure thousands of cars in one day. So,
It works.
Yeah, and that's the sort of thing that's needed to make sure that these new regulations actually work. If we'd been doing that 20 years ago, we would have found this problem 20 years ago, but nobody had been commissioning the research. If we'd done it then, we'd have found this problem a long time ago. What we now need to do is not make the same mistakes again and do this kind of research to make sure that the new regulations are actually improving things as we thought they would, or else we'd be back where we started.
But it's now used in some countries?
It's being used. It was invented actually by a guy at an American university in Colorado who's actually an expatriated Brit. He's an English guy who now works in Denver, and the system is being used both. The United States use it for their regulatory purposes. You can drive past one of these instruments instead of taking your car into a vehicle testing laboratory and taking your car off the road for a day. You can just drive past this thing.
It's very easy.
And use that as the test. So, but we're not very good at that in this country.
And do you think that European Commission, European government, it's going to adopt this as a standard?
I don't think they'll adopt it as a regulation. They might adopt it, they might fund research to make sure the regulation's working. I hope they do anyway, because that makes a lot of sense to, otherwise we'll just be back where we started 20 years ago.
Okay. Let's go back to that issue. It's strange, but it's real. If we make something for CO2, we can do something that's dangerous for air pollution and vice versa. How is possible? Give us some example.
Well, I mentioned the wood burning thing just now. But back to VW, that's the classic, another classic example. Governments were encouraging the use of diesel cars for CO2 purposes. We knew at the time that they were going to be emitting more air pollutants than a petrol gasoline car. But at the time, and this is going back maybe, 15 years or more, at the time we thought the air pollution regulations would work and that emissions from diesel cars would go down. And so that air pollution was controlled, that wouldn't be a problem, so we could keep on encouraging diesel cars. We've found out, the VW thing has shown that those regulations just didn't work. 20 years of regulation of diesel emissions in Europe just hasn't worked. For 20 years, emissions have been flat, even though the regulation has gone tighter and tighter. So, that's a really classic example of the tensions and trade-offs between climate policies and air quality policies. There are some win-wins, of course. Simple things like energy efficiency, renewables like solar and wind power. And, I annoy my very green friends by saying nuclear is also a win-win. And then, you immediately get, oh my God, you said the N-word, how dare you? But it's, if operated properly, nuclear power is actually a good thing for both climate and air quality.
perhaps if we think to the 4th-generation reactor
Yeah.
with intrinsic safety.
Yes. I mean, it's a bit dangerous making these sort of comments in Italy, where the geology is a little bit less stable than in many parts of the world.
We have some place in which nuclear central would not find. As you told at the beginning, when I asked you yes or no to Brexit, it's not possible to have a good environmental policy without a grid area in which you can display all. What do you think at the moment, how we are, by this point of view, in Europe? We are living a bad period for what concerns European governments, but in general, do you think that what we have, all the environmental rules, laws that we have are good enough for the period, enough for what is possible today, or we have to do really more?
I think the laws themselves are pretty good. The problem comes with the implementation and following up the action. And that's where things are failing. You know, the UK is facing legal action, court cases on nitrogen dioxide. We're not meeting the limits. Neither are about 18 other member states in the EU. So there are problems of implementing, and that's the difficulty. And that's actually back to Brexit, you know, because I mean, there's one thing that makes member states act, and that's a superior power with some kind of sanction over them, like a financial penalty or whatever, court action, embarrassment for the government, financial penalties. That is quite a powerful way of ensuring action, actually. You know, a country left on its own independently wouldn't have that pressure. And so, you know, the laws, yes, the laws, if the laws were fully implemented, they'd be pretty good. But it's the implementation, driving action, that's the difficult part.
I think that every activity today and in the future has and will have to do with the net, internet, social networking, and all the digital tools. Do you think that we can use in a particular way this kind of tools?
Oh, yeah, there's a huge amount of potential. You know, I mean, back to one of the points you made earlier about public information.
Yeah.
You know, there's a huge amount of information you can give to people on smartphones now, not only telling them about current levels of air pollution, but my colleagues in King's College, for example, have developed an app where you can, if you want to go from A to B in London, you can choose the least polluted route.
The least polluted.
And all this kind of thing. There are even sensors being developed now where you can make your own measurements as you walk. You know, they're quite small. There are still some accuracy problems with them, but that will be solved. And so, you know, you could imagine people making their own measurements, you know,
yes,
as they move.
Do you have a question? We can. Huh? More volume. Okay. Are there questions from the public? I don't know if someone wants to know something more precise. How do you see the future in general for all these environmental problems? We have a big mission that's not easy. We know this. You are a little bit more optimistic or not?
I'm fairly optimistic. I mean, there are still some problems that haven't been solved. A big one is agriculture. You know, not to get too technical, the levels of particles in the air are the biggest health problem that we have. And a big step in reducing those concentrations would be by reducing emissions of ammonia from agriculture. And, you know, back to what I said earlier about lobbying governments and pressures on government, then, you know, the farming lobby is extremely powerful.
Yeah.
And those emissions of ammonia just haven't come down in the last 30 years. Pretty much every other sector of industry, of the economy, has been regulated very tightly. Agriculture hasn't.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult one.
Just to define this optimistic view for what concerns us, this morning he told me something about our area in which we live, Milano, Brescia, Bergamo. I told him that this area, when looked by satellite, it's yellow among the blue. It's the only one in all Europe, and one of the 2, 3 in the entire planet. Okay, that's. And what you told me, that to have the same pollution of other parts, we have to be.
Well, it's the meteorology, the wind speeds. Yeah. A very natural way to reduce pollution concentrations is for the wind to blow stronger. In Milan and this region, you have an annual average wind speed of 1 meter per second.
1 meter per second.
In Paris, London, Rome, it's about 3.5. And so, again, you know, that
be at the same level?
means to be at the same level of air pollution. The emissions in Milan have to be 3 times smaller than they are in London, Paris, and Rome, on a very simple model. And
it's not the best period now, but probably it's better to think to migrate. Yes, there are a lot of other persons.
Well, there are a lot of other attractions in the Milan, Bergamo, Brescia area, you know, so you may not want to go far.
So we are more than half hour. There are questions? Otherwise, we can.
Just a brief comment. That when Federico asked you about the policymaker, and you give an answer about the vote of the citizen, and this is something that is for me very important in terms of research and the role of research as an impact on the society, because the real problem is the time. If we talk about pollution, for instance, and environment, but also medicine and prevention, something like that, we like to force people to act for future benefit, not for immediate benefit. When you talk about pollution, we think at some constraint now for benefiting the future generation. And this is the problem of the policymaker, because the vote is tomorrow and the benefit is the day after. How can we manage this time for our son, for the nephew, for the future generation?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, that's difficult, and the problem is amplified when you think about climate change, because that's even longer. You know, that's grandchildren. And that's difficult. I mean, I guess, you know, politicians, if they were to act, even if the benefits would come in 5-10 years, at least they could take credit for acting now. But again, it comes back to how the public would see that, whether the public would see that as an important thing or not. But you know, that hasn't stopped politicians acting now for benefits that might come in 5 years' time. I mean, the low emission zones in London, for example, are like that. Another thing that politicians can do that give benefits now is bans on traffic, you know, during high pollution episodes, or bans on other activities. And a lot of cities, I think Milan has a scheme for that, and as does Gothenburg and 1 or 2 other places. So, you know, you can act now for a benefit now if you have the political will. comes back to votes again, having the political will.
There is a famous answer, quoting George Bernard Shaw, to your question. You say, why do I have to do something for future? What future generation have done for me, so I have to do something for them? Nothing. I think that we can stop here if there are no other questions. Okay? Oh, one question from the Dean.
Well, thank you very much for what you said. However, I would like to go back to one important thing, which is the communication. Because I think that you're right when you say that, generally speaking, political people try to see more today than tomorrow. However, I think that the important mission we have is how to communicate to people and convince them that what research has been doing is extremely useful, not only for future generations, but also for themselves. Because what happens every day, and the environment, everyday's environment, is not true that it's only in the future, but it's also, as of today. Epigenetics is the typical example, of showing us what's happening. But what happens with epigenetics is going then to be carried on in future generations, maybe 2, 3 generations. Yeah. So the role of your role, Federico, and the role, of media communication is so extremely important, also for the politicians.
Yes. Well, it is, but it's also important for the researchers, and you researchers can take advantage of periods when the issue, like air pollution or whatever, is in the media spotlight, during high pollution episodes. You could imagine scientists, we do it in the UK, when there's a high pollution episode, we my colleagues more than me, but they're on television and radio, telling people where it's come from, what the causes are, and all this kind of thing to kind of highlight the research. And it's that, taking advantage of that kind of thing, I think it's important. But I also noticed there was a display in one of the piazzas I saw yesterday, with emissions of air pollution and water quality, and a very public display, and all that kind of thing can go on too.
One of the main problems, in my opinion, talking about media and communication, is that science is not a democratic activity. That's a big problem. Not all the opinions, like many other areas, not all opinion can be expressed about a scientific topic, because science comes from experiment, from long process, and people tend to think, and I think that it's obvious by a psychological point of view, they think that, okay, you say that CO2 is nothing, you're saying that CO2 is a problem, let me hear all the opinion. At the same time, it's really difficult when you are making a program, when you write something, to cope with this, because it's immediate from the public to say, why don't you hear the other part? Yeah. And that's one of the main problems. So, for example, I have decided to say this frequently when I go on air. Please don't think to science as something, we have in Italy a law that's, whose name is in Latin, par condicio. The same, yes. In science, we can't have par condicio. It is completely crazy. But we must think that this is not an easy issue to be solved, because it's obvious. For many aspects, it's important that people think that par condicio is something useful, but not in science. This is a really difficult problem to handle with.
It is because, I mean, you know, the climate skeptics is a good example. You know, you can have thousands of scientists with a positive view, and it only takes one contrary view
So
to completely
the balance is
throw the balance. Yeah.
And at the same time, one of the less known aspect of science that people, lay public has, is that of probability.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay?
Yes.
And it's a big problem. So we live in a probability sea, you know? Each one. In every decision that we make, we use the concept of probability. But when we have to do with something that has to do with science, the problem that people doesn't know what probability explodes.
You're right.
Yeah, I'm right. Yeah, quite. I'm alone. That's all? No, another question.
No, it's not a question.
It's so.
Well, we want to thank you so much for being with us in these few days, and I hope you enjoyed also Brescia.
Yes.
And we hope
It's a
to
nice
show
town.
you less polluted Brescia next time. And thank you very much. Grazie a tutti per la vostra presenza e soprattutto per essere stati presenti alla prima va bene, alla prima di queste interviste che verranno, come abbiamo detto all'inizio, collezionate e rese disponibili e che vogliono rappresentare una piccola biblioteca, diciamo così, di riferimento su questo tema, che è un tema peraltro condiviso, torno a ripeterlo, tra alcune università, quelle che avevo nominato, e che hanno visto come questa sera un tema molto presente peraltro nel nostro territorio. Mi preoccupa quel giallo.
Però
Sì,
la vista lei la fa.
tanto è vero che spesso io me ne vado, ma però è tutto da vedere quanto tempo devi stare via per non riuscire. Credo che in realtà uno non riesca a sfuggire, quindi sta un po' anche a tutti noi riuscire effettivamente a farci una coscienza, perché
dobbiamo darci
forse
dentro.
il punto centrale un po' di tutta l'intervista e anche del finale è proprio questo, vale a dire dobbiamo avere una grande fiducia nei ricercatori che portano avanti con imparzialità e soprattutto portano avanti con il pensiero e la onestà intellettuale. Le ricerche dobbiamo avere grande fiducia nella capacità di poter trasmettere questo, perché la trasmissione della conoscenza è fondamentale, è la ricaduta vera di ciò che facciamo con passione e dobbiamo anche, qualche volta lo diciamo con un po' di potema d'animo, però insomma dobbiamo avere anche fiducia nelle istituzioni che cercano effettivamente di utilizzare questi dati, che devono sempre più cercare di utilizzarli ai fini del benessere collettivo. È una parola comoda da dire, lo si dice sempre, il bene di tutti, però in realtà nel momento in cui riusciamo a essere coscienti di questo, consapevoli di questo, e in questo sì che siamo aiutati allora dai media, siamo aiutati allora dagli scienziati che sempre più devono davvero imparare a trasmettere questa conoscenza.
Sì.
E questo è un compito che è stato negletto per tanti anni, per tanto tempo, ma è un compito fondamentale ed è istituzionale proprio delle università, per cui l'Universitas nacque così, no? 1000 anni fa, e credo che dovremmo riappropriarci un attimo di questo, e questo è quello che vuole questo pomeriggio in una sala bellissima, in una sala che ha qualche secolo e che però ci esprima anche dei significati innovativi per allora, come sono stati questi affreschi del Settecento e come è stato questo lampadario del Novecento, e del quale noi ci riempiamo di gioia nel vederlo, ma anche l'arte fa parte sicuramente proprio di questo trasferimento di conoscenza e soprattutto fa parte di questa espressione sicuramente sublime del pensiero umano. Quindi grazie ancora a Martin Williams, grazie naturalmente a Federico Pedrocchi e arrivederci alla prossima. Possiamo già annunciarlo quando è la prossima, Luisa? Il 14 di aprile, abbiamo anche un tema immagino.
Paolo di Next dell'Imperial College e parla ancora di inquinamento ma sugli aspetti della salute.
Sì, quindi per chi non ha sentito va bene. 14 aprile abbiamo ospite l'Imperial College questa volta, quindi passiamo dal King's College all'Imperial College, siamo sempre a Londra e la ricaduta però questa volta è la ricaduta sulla salute e che un po', guarda caso, anche il tema di Health and Wealth va bene il tema della nostra università. Grazie ancora a tutti e buona serata.